Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home. Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the Freebirth Society podcast. This is a radical space for women who are ready to celebrate their autonomous choices in birth, motherhood, and beyond. Together, we'll learn about wild birth through personal narrative, we'll explore the politics of birth, and we'll analyze everything that relates to our lives as women from a feminist perspective. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
All right. Welcome, Chrissy.
Thank you. So beautiful to be here with you.
I'm feeling a lot of envy around your background, and I'm gonna turn it into inspiration. Maybe your husband can give me some pointers.
Yes, he would love that. He loves
so
to guide
pretty.
people.
All right. So tell us a little bit before you get into your full story. Like, where are you living? You know, what's a little bit about who you are?
Yeah. So yes, I'm Chrissy, and I live here on this beautiful land on the Sunshine Coast of Australia. We live on, well, it's called Shambhala Farm is the name of our farm. And we do many things on this farm. We also have a yoga shala. So it's me, my partner, Craig, and my two babies. My girl is not a baby anymore. She's 4. Her name's Birdie. And Cosmo, who I free birthed, he is now 7 months somehow.
Cute. Cosmo is
so we do
the name of one of Yolanda's sons.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
And the name of our black cat.
Oh, I love it.
That's awesome.
That's so funny.
So cute.
That's so funny. Yeah. Yeah. So we do lots of different things here, and I've had my own online offerings and dabbled in lots of different things. I was a yoga teacher for many, many years, hence why we have a yoga shala. And now I've just shifted into, as life does, I've just shifted along into other passions and things, especially being a mama. Yeah.
What's your focus right now?
I'm studying human design, actually. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a beautiful modality, and I'm in love with it. And it's totally like transformed my life.
Really?
I'm so obsessed. Everyone around me is like, okay, like you can stop talking about that now. No, I love it. So I'm studying it, and I've started doing the readings and stuff. And it's just really makes so much sense to me. And it's really brought me so much clarity. So yeah, that's what I'm really into right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, take us to the beginning of who are you as you become a mom, and as I'm sure the title, whatever we roll with, will point to part of why I thought it'd be interesting to have you on. I don't actually particularly find it interesting that you had a free birth at the age of 45. I don't find that interesting.
Yeah,
totally. You know what I mean? But other people will find it interesting.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a strong cultural narrative, that the older you get, the less capacity you have to birth.
Yes.
And it's just totally not true. And so you might be the oldest free birther on the season or on the podcast, although we are talking with a woman who's 50.
Woo!
So she's gonna have you beat. But anyway, not to make you sound like an old lady, but we gotta talk. But we gotta talk about the age thing because it is such a cultural misogynistic operation. So just take it away. Tell us a bit about who you are and becoming a mom.
Well, I met my partner later in life, as we say. I was, I guess, 39 or something like that. We met in Bali on a teacher training for yoga. And it was pretty instant, like chemistry. And I was like dabbling in trying to date multiple people at once and do all these things because I've been married before. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to be very good at that again. Anyways, but I met him. I was like, uh-oh. So yeah, we fell in love, and he talked me into moving to this beautiful place, which wasn't too hard. It was all quite quick. And
So he already had the farm
he had the farm, yeah,
and
for
he
many
brought you.
years.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was like, hey, do you want to come and hang out on my farm? And I was living in
What's a
Brisbane,
catch?
happy as a single woman, teaching yoga full time, like playing around, doing all the things, like having so much fun. And I was really in my element. And so it was really challenging. Actually, I was like, oh, I loved him. And I was like, that sounds nice. But I was like, really loved my life. And I'd worked really hard to get to that place of like being really fulfilled in myself. And I obviously needed to get there I think before I could fall in love with him. So that was beautiful. But I did move here, and he already had 2 kids who, you know, they were not little, but they're still young, but like he was feeling he was done, done, you know, being a papa as he's called. And yeah, but he wasn't. So he met me and I changed I think I changed his trajectory quite a bit.
Sounds like it. Wait, so were
Yeah.
you like from the get, like, oh, I'm definitely having kids?
You know what, Emily, I wasn't, because I went through a couple different relationships, and for whatever reason, you know, as the universe just throws these things, kind of goes, okay, this is your path because you're going to have to learn some things from it. And then you're going to come out the other side and, you know, hopefully have wisdom and not be bitter or whatever. And it never happened. Like, I was married twice, once when I was really young, like 20, 21. And then we divorced after a few years, but then another time when I moved here, and I don't know, it just didn't happen. Like the guy, my second husband, he was just a gypsy. He'd already had a child. He didn't really want it, even though he kind of told me that he would. So I had this weird, like, I never was one of those women that was like, I know I'm going to be a mother. I don't think it was like in me straight away. And obviously I had to go through I was meant to go through a lot of things before I was able to step into that role, which I'm really, really, really grateful that I didn't step into it earlier, to be
Oh my
honest.
God,
There's
seriously.
so much work for me, and so much, I don't know what else to call it, but like, I just had a lot of stuff to move through, and I did. And then with him, he did ask pretty quickly. Like, he was very good, very direct. Like, you know, some people just like mess around. And he was like, what are you thinking? Because, you know, obviously if you're having it's like, you know, what are you thinking? And for some reason I thought, Emily, I was like, I actually don't even know if I'm going to be able to get pregnant, because by then I hadn't, and it's not like I hadn't had sex. So I just wasn't sure. And but meeting him kind of changed some things for me, because I'm like, well, this would be a man that I would love to have babies with. You know, I really felt that strongly with him. And that was new, that feeling of like, woo, okay, that pull. And then, so it was a bit of a discussion, and we just met. So it was like, I was like, oh my gosh, are we really talking about this? And he's like, well, yeah. So I came here, lived here for a little while. And it wasn't that long. You know, we got married, and I was 40 when we kind of were really speaking to it, because obviously then, you know, I had that in my head of like, oh, you're 40. Oh my God, you totally missed the boat. You know, and I was freaking out a little bit. And in hindsight, it makes me laugh, actually. I'm like, oh my God, you had so much time. And then my husband and I had some big talks. I can still picture us sitting in the kitchen together. And I'm like, I knew, and this was something I would love to share, because this was a big question for me that came up was, some people are like, how do you know, like, when you're that later in life, like, you know, aren't you scared? And how do you know whether or not you should? And this is what I always say. If you can sit here and ask yourself the question, would my 50 or 60-year-old self regret not trying to have kids? And if you can say, you know, I wouldn't regret that, then you probably are okay to not have kids. But I couldn't say that, Emily. I was like, I would regret it 100%. I felt it so strongly in my gut. Like, you need to at least try. And that's what we said. Like, let's at least try. So again, even the language was like, we probably won't, you know, because of age, but at least let's try, so that I don't have that regret later in life. So I went to like a naturopath, and I think I got some blood work done, and, you know, did all this stuff that I really probably didn't need to do, because it was like testing if I was still, you know, able to produce a baby, which is just funny now when I think about it. But anyways, we did all that, and we got married. And not long after we got married, we were trying, like, I was way more conscious of my cycle and really learning about that. And I don't think I had as much awareness around it until I really started to want to fall pregnant. We fell pregnant not long after we were trying. I was pregnant for 9 or 10 weeks. And then when I went to the scan, I found out that we'd had an early loss, which was probably the most, devastating thing I'd ever been through. I think there was also this buildup of like, you did it, like a miracle. Like you got pregnant. You can't lose this baby. Like it'll never happen again. That fear, especially with the medical system, like how they speak to you as a geriatric mother or whatever. And the lady that gave us, I'll never forget her, the lady that gave us the news, she was cold. She had no sympathy. There was no bedside manner. It was just like, there's no heartbeat. Like she didn't even say, I'm so sorry to tell you. Like it made it even more like shocking, And I remember my body going into like almost like this shock. And it was really, really, really horrible the way
They're just drones, man.
She was pretty terrible. And even the people that referred you to her, because she's supposed to be the best at what she does at the scans and stuff, they would say,
a
they
child
would say,
could check.
she was just, the people would always say like, she just doesn't have good, like good people skills.
That's what you want.
I know. I'm like, but this is kind of, anyways. So we went through that loss, and I was really like, I grieved for a long time. Probably when I look back now, I'm like, wow, that I kept my grief for a while, but that's okay. Like that was part of my process. And, I knew, things like that come up for you to really realize what you want, right? Like I knew, I was like, I'm meant to be a mother. Like, I know I am. This proves it. I just know I'm meant to be a mama. And, I have so much appreciation for that experience now, because actually after I went through it, I shared a bit about it, and it like broke open my world, because we realized, like at the time I didn't realize, but now I see, there's not a lot of support around it. And women feel so like they have to keep it quiet, and you don't really talk about that. People don't know how to deal with your losses. It's uncomfortable for them. And so, but I didn't do that. I shared about it. I made people uncomfortable. And so we tried, this part's really beautiful because it just shows my daughter's personality came through even in the womb. But I was like, I want to try again. Like I was trying again pretty much straight away. I didn't care about getting my period back. I was like, I can feel the urgency of, and it was probably her. And I had some scarring because I had a DNC, because we had to get on a plane pretty much like right after my loss, like to go to America, to go to see my family. And I was really, I don't know, I had a lot of like, I didn't want to do it. I could feel, I was like, I don't want to do this. It's so, there's no spirit in it. But I was also really nervous about being on a long flight and having something big happen and just not feeling like what if, what if I start bleeding, and what, you know what I mean? Like those kinds of like the what if thoughts came through.
You wanted to control it.
Yeah, exactly. So when I had that operation, afterwards, I started getting like cramping and pains, and I went back, to that lady, to the scan lady, and she said I had scarring, and that can happen sometimes with the DNC, I guess. And she was like, you probably have to go in, and then then it's like, and now you have to go back, and they have to do, I can't even remember what they did, but it was something they would do to help get rid of the scarring. Anyways, they were like, you won't get pregnant now. Like that, it's just, first of all, it's not safe if you get pregnant now because of the scarring, and you need to wait until you have this surgery. And I'm like, what? And it was really hard to get an appointment to get this surgery. So not only did I feel like, I was like, it's not it's like in their hands if I get pregnant. It was the crappiest feeling. And I would like call all the time to see like, when's the next availability? And they're like, oh, in a couple months. Okay. So anyways, of course we fell pregnant because my daughter was like, fuck that. Screw that. I'm coming in.
And because all of that was nonsense.
Yeah. And she came in hot. It was just like, I remember I was teaching yoga one day, and I was like, I just felt so sick. And I was like, oh God, I feel sick. And then I was like, wait, why do I feel sick? And my husband wasn't home, and I rushed and I got a pregnancy test, and it was like bright pink or whatever. The lines came up straight away. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, huh. But at the same time, I was like, I knew it. Like I knew I could get pregnant, and I didn't need your surgery. So, it was funny because then when we went, of course, because I went into the system in a way, when we went back to get scans or when we went back to do whatever, they were like, wow, how did you do that? You know, it's just, I remember people's reactions, like the doctors and that scan lady was like, how did you guys make that happen? And I was like, just life, like just because she was meant to come and we didn't need
It's
your
called
stupid surgery.
SCX.
Yes, that's right. We had lots of sex. So that was
So
really beautiful.
what was your level of like fear and anxiety in that pregnancy?
Hi.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, hindsight is everything. But when I look back, I'm like, wow, like when you're that anxious, any woman that goes through a loss and then has another pregnancy knows it just comes with a bit of, well, or for some of us, a lot of, you know, constantly like, is it okay? Is that baby okay? Is it okay? I would say that first couple of months, Emily, I was like a bit intense for me. It was really bad. Like, and I say bad because I was leaning so heavily on controlling through the external, through the system. And I was primed for them. I was like, yeah, she's scared. Let's do the things. Like, I got a midwife and I specifically got a midwife that could be, I don't forget how they called, but like she could be in the hospital and be home birth, whatever that is. She goes back and forth. And I had so many scans. So many scans. Like I feel terrible now, like for my daughter, and I feel guilty, but I also know that at the time I was like, my mind was messed up, like not messed up, but just so
No, it's like, give me
anxious.
that reassurance. Give me that
Yes,
reassurance.
it was like
Like
addiction, like
yeah, it really is.
every week until I hit second trimester. And then I finally was like, okay, you know, like let's lean into it. Let's trust this baby's okay. This baby's still here. There was
So
so much.
who are you at that point pregnant with her? You get the medical midwife. Are you thinking you'll home birth? Like
I
what's
thought
your
maybe I would, but between my partner and I think he was nervous because he also has the myth of the age being a factor or being a risk factor. And of course we were told, you know, how many times that was a risk. And, you know, like when you go get the scans and they do all the things and she's like, I'd like to put you at this risk, but with your age, we have to, you know, like all that
So
conversation.
did you do all the genetic testing and the amnio? Like where was the line with because of your age? Which by the way, just a presence
No,
at
I
this
didn't do,
point, you're
I was 41.
41. Okay.
I didn't do I did like what's the like kind of first one they do? I don't know what it's called, sorry. But I didn't do like where they test for like if there's Down syndrome and stuff like that. I was told like very much pressure put on me to do it. And I was like, I don't want to do that because I'm gonna have this baby, whoever they are. Like,
Well, so the kind of interesting thing about this is, and I'm more so talking to everyone else, not necessarily you, because you probably understand this, but the thing about the age in the system, well, really is that it's one of, you know, it's one of the many colorful ways to control you.
totally.
But what they will say, you know, their story that they run with is actually nothing to do with your ability to give birth. It is around the health and integrity of your eggs. And so that's interesting, I think, because I guess what I'm saying is the concern within the system about a woman over 38, 37, whatever, it's kind of the needle's always moving, is actually not about her body once she, you know, conceives a baby. It's about the chromosomal health of the fetus that is growing. It's not actually about your ability to have contractions and release a baby. It's very specifically about the health and integrity of the egg. And so it's just kind of interesting because even within that system, I think it's interesting that you were like not feeling all those tests, but still under the spell of the
Yeah.
larger, you know, myth that there was something like wrong or potentially wrong. But
Yeah.
in truth, even in their systems, it has nothing to do with your age.
Yes, I hear you. And yeah, I remember that sitting in that office and there was a lot of pressure to do the test, do that test specifically that one. It was like, you need to know this. And I was like, no, because I'm not I'm not doing anything with this information. And how do I even know if that's 100% true? Right.
But you didn't do genetic testing, but you did several
like,
ultrasound scans.
I did. Yeah. Several's a good, yeah. I did many scans.
So what were you after? Was it just
I
heartbeat
just,
here?
the
Yeah.
heartbeat. Yeah. So sometimes I'd go in and they'd literally just do it would be like they'd put it on my belly and I'd be in there for like 2 seconds just because they, knew that's all I was looking for. And so I didn't really want to check anything else. And we didn't want to know, if it was a boy or a girl. I wanted some, and interestingly enough, with all that, I still wanted surprise, even though I'd gone through this whole medical system.
Well,
And
you're contending with your own fear, which is
yeah,
what we're all doing,
yes,
through this. It's
yeah,
like you have intuition coming through, you have
yeah,
like whispers of what your heart is being drawn to, and then you also have the way in which you're contending or humoring your fear.
yes. And often my fear would win
Mm-hmm.
in the journey of that pregnancy. Which I know I don't think I hold as much guilt, but there was a time there where I felt really guilty after when I opened my eyes to, especially learning everything about free birth. I'm like, oh my gosh, you just see my first birth now with like these other, there's no blinds over my eyes anymore. I'm like, I see all the things, which is kind of painful at the time.
Yeah.
There are deep, powerful secrets to your own sacred experience of womanhood that no one in your life knew to tell you. The time has come to fully awaken the wise woman within you and to claim your place on the ancient path of supporting holistic women's health. You're well aware of the devastating reality that is modern fertility, modern menstruation, industrial birth, the way our society treats menopause, and really all of the rites of passage for women from start to finish. We are countless generations deep now with girls initiated into womanhood with deep, lifelong, toxic shame. Grown women have no idea how to tell when they're fertile, how to prevent pregnancy, how to address menstrual challenges without pharmaceuticals. There's no room for how to harness the wisdom and gifts of our cycle's phases. Women are afraid of their own bodies, and they teach this to their daughters, and their daughters teach it to their daughters. This just isn't good enough. Not for me, not for you, and certainly not for our daughters. And here we are, together in this time, wanting to do better, wanting to be better, to break the shame cycle, and to leave our lineage injected with power, wisdom, strength, and self-love. Join us for the next round of the Blood Mystery School. Our highly coveted program is channeled and run by two long-standing sisters of mine, women who are core leaders within Matriarch Rising Festival and Free Birth Society. Nancy Lucina is a shamanic facilitator and medicine woman. Kristen Hauser is a woman's holistic health expert. Together, they take you on a potent 8-week journey where you walk the medicine wheel of your own menstrual cycle's archetypes so that you can learn to guide the women of your community through cycle healing of all iterations. You will address the spiritual, energetic, hormonal, and biological aspects of every phase of the female cycle so that you are fully equipped to become the radical, sovereign cycle coach that your community really needs. The Blood Mystery School will pave the way for your career in cycle and fertility coaching, holistic women's health, and ceremony facilitation. This knowledge is foundational to any work in birth or women's health at large. We only run the Blood Mystery School once a year, so make sure you're on the wait list. The link is below. It is time that you walk with the knowledge all the women, and I do mean all, around you need to know. Let's be the ones that steer our bloodlines toward embodiment once and for all.
My midwife, she was obviously quite in the system because she was very much like could be in the hospital and, she was obviously a medical midwife. And I really relied on her for a lot. And now I understand that I gave her, my power, like in so many ways. And I gave the system my power in so many ways. And I wanted it. I think there was a part of me that really wanted to home birth Emily, but there was still so much fear around what if something happened. My partner was probably a bit nervous around my age. I mean, maybe if I said that to him now, he'd be like, no, it wasn't. But I do remember it came up in conversations, because we both, were taught that, that's pretty old to have a baby.
Mhm.
And there's, like not my family so much, but other people closer to us that probably had expressed their fears as well, which people love to do when you're pregnant. And so we ended up saying we're going to do it in the hospital. And that was like our birth plan would just be to go to the hospital when I was in labor. But I didn't ever get to go into labor naturally because I ended up being induced, of course. And I say, of course, because when I look at what happened in my pregnancy, I'm like, yeah, I was really vulnerable to like the outside information. And I think it was really hard for me to hear my own intuition, which is like the thing that I'm so passionate about. And it's what I share about now is like, listening to my own voice.
And you were always going to be induced. Almost all
Absolutely.
women are induced in the system. That's
Yeah.
just like without intuition or not,
Yeah.
that's the track you were on, whether you realized it or not.
No, I think I didn't realize at all. And I just assumed I would go into, I would go into labor naturally and experience all the things. And I started to, one day, this one night, I had like a night that was really hard and I was like throwing up a lot. And I actually thought, I was like, oh, am I going into labor? Because it was close to my guest date, I was close to 40 weeks or whatever. And I was just vomiting all night and I was really like sick, not feeling good. And, we told my midwife. So she came that morning and she took my blood pressure and it was really high. And and even she tried taking it, like she took it multiple times. She tried like to get a normal one. And then I could just see on her face and I was like, what is it? And she's like, I got to call the hospital. We've got to have you go in. And, yeah, I remember her calling and I had no idea then. I was like, there's a part of me that probably felt reassured because I was like, she was taking care of me, figuring out what was wrong. Like I didn't want anything to be wrong with the baby. But that's when it started. And that's when the preeclampsia came up. The preeclampsia diagnosis came up. And now I'm like, now I look back and everything I've learned from, you guys, I know I didn't have preeclampsia.
Also, what even is preeclampsia? It's like,
Yeah.
it's like completely changes, it's like COVID, like what is it?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's high BP with this midwife. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one symptom. It's supposed to even be a collection of symptoms, like were
Yeah.
you presenting with extreme swelling of the extremities and
No, there was
visual
no swelling ever.
disturbances and
Yeah. There was one other thing. I think it was so interesting because I think I had like for a while she'd been testing my urine or something and I tested with protein in it or something like that. And that was that was the other one they used. As well as my high blood pressure. But of course, I got to the hospital, my blood pressure, fine. 100% fine. Nothing else was wrong. And it never went back up again, except for when I was in labor, because of course they induced me. And that now I understand that what they gave me actually causes high blood pressure, which later I was like, what? I mean, it just blew my mind. But yeah, so once I got into the hospital, it was really tricky because they wanted to immediately get me, into induction. And I hadn't slept all night. I hadn't eaten. I felt like crap. I was so confused. I was like messaging and calling my midwife while I was at the hospital. And they were really strong. The hospital staff, the nurses and staff there were like, and I'll never forget when they pulled out that, your baby could die card. You could die. Your baby could die. Like all this stuff, and my partner and I are in this hospital going like, can she eat first? Like, can she go home and have a meal? Like, can she have a nap? Like, I was just so delirious because I hadn't slept and I've been throwing up all night. So I was like, this is not a good time for me to have a baby, right? Like, shouldn't I
your
feel
BP had regulated?
Totally.
They're like, you have totally normal blood pressure. You could definitely die.
Yeah, exactly. And your baby could definitely die. And
It's
when they
so
pull that card, it's so
stupid.
disgusting. I'm like, now I look back and I'm like, how gross. And I had to sign the thing, like when you leave without their permission, I had to sign the thing. And I was like, oh my God. So like, it was horrible. But
Well,
of
you
course
didn't actually have to sign it.
no, I probably didn't have to sign it, but it felt like I did to get out of there, to get out of jail. And I went
So you
home and
do. Okay.
I was so I denied that, but it took all my willpower because it was still scary. And then I went to I went home, ate, had a sleep, felt much better, but I was still going back and forth with my midwife. And even she was trying, she did the whole like she wanted me to make the decision and she was trying not to give any opinions. But we would I'd go to visit with her and we'd call the hospital and they were like, oh, we think that, la, 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 you should come back in and, you can. And at this point I was almost the 40 weeks. And yeah, so something I want to share about this part, because I really feel clarity around it when I listened to a podcast with you and Yolanda, and you guys were talking about victim, being in victim mode. And it was the first time I'd really heard about it as in a way that it just like landed so hard. And Yolanda was saying something and I had to rewind it like 3 times because I was like, this is it. This is what happened to me. And it was like this feeling of like, she was saying like, there's that feeling in victim mode that you're just like, you want to be saved. Like, you're like, save me. Yes, I'm special. Save me. And I remember that feeling, Emily. I remember that feeling so strongly now. Like, I remember because I was like telling like some of my closest friends, this is what's happening. Oh, I think I'll have to, like, I think they'll have to do this for me. And, like even my language was probably around like, something was wrong with me or wrong with the baby and we had to get saved.
The
And it
drama.
was, it was the drama.
Of course.
And it was weird.
And
Like I
it's
can
like
still
kind of
feel
fun
that.
and it's kind of exciting,
Yeah, I think there was a bit of excitement.
Of course.
And I wanted my own drama, maybe, because I've been listening to another podcast. I didn't know yours yet. I hadn't found you yet. That wasn't until Cosmo. And there was a lot of drama in it, in those stories. Like there was always something going on, something drama, someone was saved. And I'm like, I must have like wanted to have that. So I chose it. So on my 40, on my due date, I chose to, we rode into the hospital and I was induced. And I remember being excited. Of course I was excited because I'm meeting my baby. But now if someone tried to do that with Cosmo, induce me, I would have been so livid, like get but it was just, I was a different Chrissy and I didn't have that information and I wasn't ready probably for that.
It's like ultimate predator, it's like ultimate, like preying on that excitement, like the fact that you are going to meet your baby and they're not even remotely transparent. A lot of fear mongering that's really like pretty deeply unethical, but also they aren't transparent about what an induction is and what it involves and what it often results in and how dangerous it is. And man, it is such a violent and usually very long process.
Yeah.
People don't really know what they're saying yes to.
No.
Not probably. They women do not know what they're saying yes to. It is
That's
often
right.
pitched as just a little gel. We'll just start with a little gel and see what happens,
Yeah.
Hardcore.
They did the balloon, like to break my waters.
The Foley balloon.
The balloon thing. And just the pain of getting that in the night before. My midwife was like, are you? Because I didn't make a sound. I was just like trying to breathe through it. And she was like, usually people are like writhing and screaming. And I'm like, I just was trying to like go away, like leave my body because it was the most horrible, painful thing, especially while you're pregnant. Like you're already.
So she's describing the Foley balloon, which it's a torture device of obstetrics in which it actually attempts to pry open your cervix, which is an internal organ for a reason. And so if it is successful in violently opening the cervix, then the Foley balloon will fall out. And then the next step is going to be Pitocin or rupturing the bag of waters. And it's like you're describing, you know, I just want other women to really hear that, because it is, yeah, it's called the Foley balloon. It is a very common initial tool in forcing a baby out.
It was horrible. It was probably one of the worst parts, to be honest, which I didn't expect. And that night, it was like I was starting to get surges and like really strong, and they would come in and check on me. And there was a point they came in and they were like, "Oh, how long has she been like this?" And my partner was like, "Oh, a little while." And then they had other people come in, but then of course it went away. All the surges went away, and I kind of rested for a bit. And then I had to go in, and my midwife came to the hospital at, I think it was like 6 a.m. that they come in, and then they fully busted it, busted it all open, and my waters broke forcefully. And then they're like, I was told that I would get some time to see if labor could start naturally, even though it's like, it's not natural because he just did the thing with my, yeah. And they gave me like, I reckon it was like 10 minutes or something. It wasn't time. It was just like a blip. And I was like, oh, and they were like, okay, it's not happening. So, we're going to put you on Pitocin, and we'll start you on a low dose or whatever. And you can walk around, and yeah. And my midwife was there for that. And then she left because she wanted to be there for the actual baby coming. And so she left, and there was the second midwife who I didn't really know, but she was part of the same like company of midwives. And yeah, if you've never been induced, if you've been induced, you know what I'm talking about, but it was pretty intense and it ramped up pretty fast. It wasn't gradual. Like a little bit in the morning, I remember being able to talk and laugh with my partner and walk around. And then there was this point midday where it just went boom. And it was just like boom, 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 like surge after surge. And they do the thing where they put the strap around your belly to monitor you and the baby. And they could never get it right, Emily. So all I can remember about my labor with Birdie is that there was a woman constantly touching me, constantly moving this thing in the middle of surges too. And it was just the most uncomfortable thing in the world, because she was constantly like, and then they had the beeping, the machine that like tells you when you're going to have a surge. So it was like half the time they were like watching that. I was watching that. And it was just horrible, because it was like this constant, like, okay, when's the next one coming? And there was not really a lot of relief. And then she would constantly be going, "Oh, Chrissy, I really need to, I need to move that. I can't get the baby's heartbeat." Fuck. It was horrible. And now that I have hindsight of what happened with Cosmo. Anyway, so there was a lot of touching, a lot of monitoring. And of course, there was a monitor, of course, outside my room. And there was a doctor and a team, because it's like a university hospital. So there's like a team outside. And whenever Birdie's heart rate would go too low or too high or whatever, they'd come in the room. Like they just come in. And it was so disruptive. And it would make me nervous every time they came in, because I knew it meant that something wasn't okay. And what were they going to do? And there was something that happened the other day that I wanted to share. Like I watched, because I was trying to get Birdie's exact birth time, and I was watching the video, and it's actually hard to watch because it's just, I don't know, it makes me want to cry. Yeah. Like my partner was there trying to support me. He was beautiful through the whole thing. Just like right there with me the whole time. Like I was like leaning on him, and then I had my midwife had came back because, at some point I was pushing and I was kneeling on the ground. And it was just like with that induction, like with the Pitocin, it's so not natural. Like it was just so intense, and it was so like labor's intense. But now that I've had both, it wasn't a natural, like gradual contractions. It was just like you're just being throbbed like over and over. And I remember just like my midwife at one point just said, the second midwife was like, I need to know how the baby's doing. And, the thing wasn't working. They kept not getting a heartbeat. So she's like, we want to put one thing we can do so that we don't have to keep touching, you don't have to wear this, is they can do into the baby's scalp.
I mean, we don't really like you moving around, so we could just screw a metal screw into your baby's head. We could just hurt your
Yeah,
baby.
totally.
It's
And at
fucking
the time,
crazy.
it's nuts. And at the time, Emily, I was like, no, and they
Of
didn't, of course,
course.
tell me it like you just did. They made it sound much more like it won't even hurt the baby. They won't even feel it. What? Like, I'm like, really?
Dude, evil,
And I
evil,
just,
evil.
and she's like, you'll have to lay down. And that was where I was like, no, because I was getting the surges every blah,
Right.
blah, blah, every couple minutes, every minute. And it was like a tiny bit of break. And I was on my hands and knees or lunging either. And that was the only way that felt like laying down was like, no.
No, of course.
And she was like, there was a point where they offered it and I declined. She's like, okay, we'll just have to keep doing the strap thing. And then there was a point where she offered it again. And that was when I was starting to like bear down and push more because I could feel I needed to push. This is more in the nighttime now. And I was like, I succumbed because I was so tired. And I was just like, I think, at that point you're just so vulnerable and beaten down. And it's like, anyways, so they did that and I had to lay down and it was excruciating because I was going, having surges and they're like laying me down, doing the thing to my baby that I didn't really want them to do.
So for
But
everyone listening, this is referred to as internal fetal monitoring. So any of you listening to this podcast and for some reason still going to birth in the hospital, just get that, keep that in your head. Internal fetal monitoring is what she's referencing.
so we had that. And then my other midwife, my main midwife came and I did feel better when she came because I was just like all these other people I didn't know. And at least I knew her. And there was all the, like the cleaning up the whole time, the holding the warm washer to like now I'm like, oh, I can't even imagine I had someone touching me during labor. During labor, I'm a Yanni. Like, no. And there were so many people there. And the one thing I was going to point out to you that really stuck out that I when I watched the video was that the doctor would come in. It was a female doctor. She would come in and there would be a few other people with her, maybe students. And there was a point where they were saying, it's not looking good. The baby's heart rate, we don't like it. Like, here's our options. This is what might happen. And so my midwife kind of like, she kept going in and out. And the last time she went out, my midwife goes, Chrissy, if they come in again, it might mean that you have to get on the table and they might have to use forceps. And I was like, no. And I just felt my whole body be like an animal, like that, fight or flight, like, no, I'm getting my baby out. And so I was like, don't take this from me because the whole time I hadn't had any, I didn't take any gas. I didn't take any, what's the one? The main medicine that women take so they don't have to feel it.
Epidurals?
Yeah, sorry, the epidural. I didn't have anything. I was determined to, even in my induced state, I was determined to just have my baby without all the things. And I was like, I'd fought so hard to get to that point. But then when the doctor left and she said, they might have to vacuum or forceps. And I was just like, no. And so of course I'm in labor. I'm doing the thing. I'm pushing. I'm starting to push. And I've got one midwife behind me. My midwife's here, doing all the things with the mirror and everything. And I can feel Birdie's head. Like I can start to feel her head. And so we're getting closer. Like she's starting to crown. But I'm in that panic state because I know I'm like, if that doctor comes back in, So the doctor comes in again, of course, because she just can't not. And Birdie's heart rate had gone back down or something. And I could feel even I could feel my midwife was kind of like, like leave us alone, like even she was just like trying to protect me in her own way, even though, she can't now that we're in the hospital. And the doctor came in. I remember she stood with her hands behind her back and she was doing this and, looking like, like I'm in the zoo and she's just checking me out. And I remember just feeling like, especially even now when I look back, I'm like, I could feel that energy. That was gross.
Sure.
And she's like, I'm getting closer. She can see it. She's like, oh, it'd be really good to, get the baby out now, Chrissy. And she's like, and then I remember she said something and I didn't even know this until I watched the video the other day. And it was like, you can do this without me, actually. You don't even need me for this. I remember she said that. Like, and I was like, I don't remember knowing if I heard it then, but when I watched the video, it was like, you don't need me. All you have to do. And she says this, she goes, on the next contraction, just push as hard as you can. So she tells me. So she's literally telling me to just get, push as fast and hard as I can. And so as Birdie's, as my next contraction comes, I'm like, I'm fucking doing this. Don't you dare touch my baby, And I take her words and I take my own fight or flight. And my girl, and of course I tore. My girl came out, and while I'm pushing her out, because I'm like pushing with all my might, everyone's yelling at me. Everyone's yelling. I didn't know that I should go really slow. I actually didn't know. I don't think I was ever told that. And then they were like, in the video, you can hear everyone's like, breathe, Chrissy, breathe, 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 like yelling at me. Like, it's so intense when you watch the video. Which my midwife did apologize like straight away after. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to get you to slow down. But no one said that. They were just like yelling at me to breathe. And I was like, I couldn't hear them. I was screaming and just pushing Birdie out as fast as I can. And of course, she came out really fast because she was so tiny. And then, I picked her up, and yeah, it was beautiful. Once she was with me and I had her on my chest, and of course they had to like come in with all the towels and all the things and do all the cleanup right away. And I don't know. I was holding her and just like, okay, I said, we did it. But it was so intense that when she came out, like just people yelling at me, and just now that I have the contrast of Cosmo and just me and my family, it's just worlds of difference. And no, I didn't feel anything. I didn't know when she was coming down. I didn't feel, because I was so intensely disturbed. And, the surges were so fast. It was just hard to even feel into my own body. Right. But we did the thing, and they gave me the shot to get the placenta out. And I remember that moment because she kind of was like, it'd be good to, for you to birth your placenta soon. And of course,
you were already on Pitocin.
Yes, but I remember she gave me a shot of something
but it was Pitocin.
So she gave me more.
Yeah.
And I remember she said, I didn't get asked. I remember she was like, this will help to, get everything moving. And we don't, so you don't have to wait. And so there's no extra bleeding. And I just remember getting a shot in my leg and being like, oh, what just happened? And then they moved me to the bed and did the lovely massage that you want to have right after you've just given birth. Which I'm being sarcastic. Obviously, it was really painful, and like all these things. And then they stitched me up, and that was interesting. Because I had a tear, of course, because I pushed her out so fast. And yeah, and then we stayed one night, and that was interesting. And the nurses no one wanted Birdie to be in the bed with me.
I want to say that you didn't necessarily tear because you push so fast. I've been to plenty of sovereign births where the mother, instinctively or whatever, doesn't really matter. When a mother decides that she is effing over it and she is going to get this baby out, and it doesn't necessarily equal tearing, but the environment is very different where it's mother led. And also women tear. I mean, women tear in sovereign births, women tear, so tearing but they're very different environments in which, what you experienced was not a physiological tear, right? It was, it's giving birth in war. People call it a hospital birth, but it's giving birth under humiliation and like real true assault and verbal abuse
and so much stress.
Oh my God. And so, all of that, literally being screamed at while you are on your back, on drugs, splayed open in front of strangers, under bright lights, on monitors. I mean, fuck, it's so hardcore. It's so abusive and so degrading.
Yeah.
I'm just so sorry that was your first birth. It's such, even though it's a common story, it is such a brutal initiation.
Yes. Yeah, it is. But it's weird, it felt like this is normal.
Of
This is
course, it's
okay. Like it
normalized. Of
was,
course.
yeah, it was normal. It was okay. And something else that was really different in this birth, Emily, I'll share that it was really like public. Like all my friends kind of knew, my family knew. My Craig was giving them updates while we were in that moment, which maybe for some people that's maybe that feels good to them. But now I look back and I'm like, there was so much energy going out. People knew too much too early.
You had no privacy.
No, there's no privacy. I'd like given everything away before I even met my daughter.
Yeah.
Which is sad. I learned so much. And I know that like there's so much I'm like, oh, I wish I could change that. But I also I'm aware that there's a reason. Like I had to go through a lot of that and then I needed to change for the next one. And I was really, really aware that I didn't want to do that again.
Yeah.
Ever.
So at what point after the birth, like what's kind of your initial take? Is it like that was awesome? I'm a badass. I'm so stoked I had a vaginal birth. Look at me. Or like,
Yes.
yeah.
I was very like, because there was a point where I was like, I did that. Like I felt really proud of myself. I couldn't believe I got through it. And now I look back and I'm like, I can't believe you got through it either.
Totally.
With what happened, right? Like it's wild. But very much, yeah, I'm a badass. Like I'm a superhero. Like look at what I did. I didn't take any drugs. I didn't,
You
do all
took
the
drugs,
things.
right?
Yeah, I took drugs, but
Okay.
in my mind, I was like, I was induced, but I did it still vaginally, naturally.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Because I do feel lucky that I didn't get to that next level, of C-section or whatever else, forceps or vacuuming my baby out. Like they were threatening it, and I could see we were gonna go down to the, we were going to the cascading. It could have happened fast, but yeah, I feel really lucky that we didn't have to do that, and that I did get to.
It is such a dark fucking world that women feel lucky for the abuse that they got because other women are abused worse.
And I
Like,
put
that's so
my
painful.
midwife on a really big, big pedestal. I remember writing her a review, and it was this huge review, Emily, about everything she'd done. And she was like my savior, like the savior thing.
And she's who sent you to the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how I felt. It took a long time for me. It took me a while to unpack.
So let's shift into that. Like what starts to give you those light bulb moments? When do you, and what inspires you starting to get a different perspective on the birth experience?
I think it took a really long time. It wasn't until I think I started to see when I saw my friends, I had some really close friends giving birth at home, and that felt really different. And then I started to kind of explore and unpack mine in the hospital. And, they didn't have monitors. They didn't have beeping. They didn't have Pitocin until they were transferred to the hospital, one of them. But yeah, they didn't.
And they did have monitoring, and they did have Pitocin.
Well, they did have monitoring. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. But even amongst that, like theirs, when you compared the hospital version of mine to theirs, it felt like theirs was just so much more like spiritual and natural. And undisturbed, which it wasn't, obviously. Now I see that. So Emily, honestly, probably not until I was really,
it's like the totem pole of abuse. It was just less abusive.
Yes, exactly. And it wasn't until I was pregnant with Cosmo that I really went into, I didn't wake up until I really, had my second pregnancy come through. And then, when I found you guys, and it was really one of those things too, that I thought I was one and done because old, because of the age.
So was the pregnancy a surprise?
No.
Okay.
No, I called that in. We called that in, and he was coming.
This is very common. I work with women who get willing to address their birth trauma, and that's primarily what my coaching practice is. And what I see most often the case is it isn't until she's pregnant again. And when she's pregnant again, it's like, well, now there's kind of this obvious ticking time bomb where we're going to have to turn some rocks over. We're going to have to address if
Yeah.
we're going to do something different, and things
Yes.
brew before that. But there is this kind of obvious, very literal, expiration date of we have to make some choices. And so what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So it's very, very understandable that it would come up again.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me a while until, he was finally had landed, but I didn't think I would have another one. In fact, I was one of those women who was like, I didn't know if I was going to ever have babies. And then I had one and I was like, I remember bringing her home, and it wasn't long after that I got this strong, almost like a voice, like, and I still laugh because I think I told my partner, like, I think we're not supposed to close the shop yet. And of course he's going, really? This man that thought he was done with babies, right? And then he's got this woman in his life that's like, well, maybe we should have another one. We did it the first time, okay? And I held on to that feeling, but I was so, I was just getting to know motherhood and being a mama. I loved it, and it was obviously challenging, but I just loved being a mama to my daughter, and it just like really transformed me, which of course that's such a cliche thing, but it just, I don't know, it really took me on into this other place that I never thought I'd go to. But it was probably when she was, I don't know, maybe when she was 2-ish, and I was like, okay, like I really want to have another baby. And it took me quite a while. Like I know some women get their bleed back quite quickly, but for me, I didn't. And we were breastfeeding for a long time. And even in that, I'm like, this is where my voice started to get, I think too, as you become a mother, your voice just goes really strong. Like your intuition and your voice you can, I think, step into it in a way that you haven't before. And that happened for me. And I wanted to breastfeed for as long as possible because I also didn't know if I would get to have another baby. And I was like, I don't want to cut this off too short. I would regret that. And I was told multiple times that in order to get my bleed back, I'd have to stop breastfeeding. And this was like, someone told me this like when she was a year, and they were like, because of your age, and because I'd gone to see someone, and because of your age, and because of just, all the things, you probably should stop breastfeeding now so you can try and get your bleed back. And I was like, but like, she's just turning 1. Like, it just felt too early for me. It wasn't right. It didn't feel right. So I just listened to my intuition, like, don't do that. And then we breastfed for a really long time, and she was still breastfeeding, at 2, which is great. And I still hadn't got my bleed back. And again, I kept getting the advice, like, well, you probably should stop. And I just felt really like, I was like, no. And I'd ask my body, like, do you think that we can fall pregnant? Or do you think that we can get our bleed back while I'm breastfeeding? And, I would hear like, yeah, you can do that. So I did. So I got my bleed back, and we were still breastfeeding, and that was great. And then my partner and I, we were kind of trying, but like lazy trying, like not really, probably not having enough sex, if you know what I mean? Like, it was like, we were trying, and I was like looking at my window and really trying to I was more in touch with my cycle, more in touch with my body than ever. Really, getting more connected with nature and how it affects like my cycle. And just, it was a really beautiful time of learning. And then there was this weird period of time where I just could feel, I was like, this intensity. And I was like, I think we really need to try. I said to my partner, we really need to go for it. So it was on, it was like having sex pretty frequently. And it was fun. Like, it was just like, like, this might be it. We could do this. And I just had this really strong urgency. I don't know if it was my son, like going, okay, now. And then from that week where I think we just had a lot of sex, we, at one point we felt pregnant. And it was funny because even like now that I've done so much learning from you guys from Freebirth Society, I didn't even take a test for a long time. Like, I didn't even really want to, I don't think, but I didn't get my bleed. And I remember we had family visiting, and they were like, well, probably then you're pregnant, right? But then even I was going, well, maybe it's maybe it's perimenopause. Maybe my cycle is just like, because that was another option possibly. Like,
Because
which is
now
funny.
you're 45.
I was 40. Yes, 45. Yeah. Like I think we fell pregnant right at 44, at the end of 44, and then I turned 45. Anyways, and of course I was like announcing on my social media when I was 45. I was like, 45 and pregnant. Because I was so like, yeah, this is normal. Like, and the amount of women that would come through my messages and all the things that were like, how'd you do it? Like, so many women are so scared. In their 30s, they're scared, and they'd be like, I'm 35 and I don't have a partner. And I'm like, oh, honey, like, you have time, like, don't let that anxiety, like, there's just so much anxiety,
But what's a
for
trip
women.
is that also can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where I think the deep work is like your shit needs to stay open, needs to stay in the flow of what brings
Uh-huh.
you joy and be in an
Yes.
abundant mindset. And if you
Yes.
at 34, 35, 36, 37 are like, I'm a washed up hag and I'm never going to have
Yes.
anything and I'm never going to find anything, like you will make that be true.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. And so, yeah, I started doing like, yeah, I started to share a lot more about my journey on my platform, which was great. And I got a lot of beautiful connections happening through that with other women who were hopeful, but they were being told by the medical system that it was probably too late or they'd have to go do IVF. There was a point where I was told that I should probably go for IVF. I made an appointment. I filled out paperwork. I know, listen, I made an appointment. I filled out paperwork. I was like on the phone with them, like, oh, and I think they were quite a big drive away from us, but it was like, he was really good. But I knew the whole time. I was like, I don't want to do this. It's just not my journey. Like, what am I doing? And this was coming from the external noise, right? And so there was a point where I think our appointment was coming up and I woke up one morning and I was like, no, like a big no in my head. And I called them and I was like, I'd like to cancel my appointment. And they're like, okay, when can we reschedule you? And I was like, no, I want to cancel it. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, are you sure you don't want to reschedule? And I was like, no. And it felt so good. But that was such a mind fuck because that was so external noise, external pressure
Was
telling
this
me that
prior to Birdie?
no, no, no,
It
no.
was
This was,
after Birdie?
yeah, yeah,
Whoa.
yeah.
Like after
No,
you've
this was like,
had a fertile.
totally. Yeah. But it's funny how it still was sneaking in.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I said no to that. No way. And then, yeah, we fell pregnant and I was sure I was pregnant, but I was also like, I didn't want to tell anybody. I wanted to say like, I was like, yeah, I haven't got my bleed. And I had a couple of close sisters, close women friends that I like, they were through the whole thing with me, all of it. Like they were just with me the whole time. Thank God for our sisters. Hey. And yeah, they were just like, I don't think it's perimenopause, like, and I think there's just a part of me that I was so hopeful and I really felt that it
Mm-hmm.
was true that I was pregnant, but I was like, what if I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't test for a while. I waited a while and
And then what? At 7 months?
no, I didn't know. It was like, I don't know how many weeks I was, but I was a little ways in and then I'm like, all right, I'll test for whatever reason. And it wasn't, I didn't know about like, I didn't understand or know about wild pregnancy, if that's the term. I didn't, that wasn't because I was still under the assumption that I would have a midwife, but this time, no way, I wasn't going to the hospital. I was doing it at home. And I had a specific midwife that I wanted because my friends had her and she's really, this beautiful woman, wise woman, respected in the community, beautiful reputation. And that, I knew her. I wasn't like, I wouldn't say I was close to her or anything, but we were like friendly. And one of my closest friends, she was her midwife. And I was actually there for the birth, for a lot of the birth, actually the part at home and then the part of the hospital. I was like support for that. So, I'd seen her in her element and, I was determined. I thought that was who I would have.
The
And
woman that transferred your best friend.
yes. Yeah. And yeah, it seemed like the right thing to do because again, but this was before I really understood that as
Yeah.
a woman, as the woman birthing, that I was actually the expert, and because my background, Emily, is that I was raised quite like I had a religious background and I was a good girl for a long time. So I'm the recovering good girl in my 40s.
Aren't we all, sister?
That's so true. But you get to a point and you're like, is it still? And my people pleasing was hard. I was a hardcore people pleaser. Like I did that stuff hard. And I was good. I was good at people pleasing, which isn't something I'm proud of, but yeah, I was good at it. And so even then, like, this midwife, she's on the pedestal, like, even more so because I was like, thought she was really friendly. And I thought she was like, kind of like this cool, like spiritual hippie one, and she like, I still to this day, I still think that she's a beautiful person, a beautiful woman. And I'll get to the part where we just weren't a match eventually. Like it just wasn't right for me to do that path. But I did, contact her early on, and I was told, you better get onto her because, she's probably going to book up. And this was really early in the pregnancy. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. So I did that. So I booked in with her, and I knew I wanted to do it at home this time. So that was a bit of a different trajectory. And early on, when they did my blood work, because of course, I did the blood work to make sure that I was really pregnant or whatever. And they found my, oh, crap, what is it called? The pregnancy hormone. They found that was it was a bit higher than they thought it should be at what week I was at, or how far along or how early I was. And it was like um, the thing I was told was it would be good to get a scan. And this was quite early. It would be good to get a scan because what if there's twins? And I was a little bit like surprised. I was like, oh, I wasn't thinking I'd do all that as much this time. Like I knew that was one of my things was I didn't want to get all these scans. I had so many with Birdie. I didn't want to do that again, Emily. I'm like, oh man. So, but I was like, okay, that's something I want to know. I want to know if I have twins in there. Like I was like, I felt that I needed to know that. And so that worked. And I went and there wasn't twins. It was just one baby. And that was probably like, I don't even know how early that was. Obviously, that was first trimester. And I remember a little bit even then being surprised that my midwife encouraged it. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think you would want me to do that. But then, now I'm like, well, yeah, like she was, she was in the system and she was doing the things that
She's a medical midwife.
Yeah. And so, but I remember being surprised even early on, like, oh, okay, we're doing that. And so I did that. Everything was fine. There was one baby. There was a little bit of time there where we were like, is there two? And then I started to go through just like I'd meet with her, not much at the beginning. And all in all, my pregnancy with Cosmo was what I would say is boring. Like it was beautiful. I didn't need anything. It was fine. Like we felt good. Like we'd have meetings with her. She'd come to the house. And check the baby and do the thing, the Doppler. Yeah, and do that. But the meetings were pretty like spread out, at the beginning. So I didn't even feel, and I didn't like get in touch with her about anything because I didn't, feel like I needed to, so that already was different because, with Birdie, I was like, probably calling every couple days to be like, oh, is everything okay? I felt this, whereas I could feel there was a strong, and this baby, man, when he landed, it was like, it was just like, he was just so here. And I was so different, and I had a much stronger connection, I think, to my own intuition and trusting. And I didn't want all of the noise as much. And I didn't know yet. Like I was really, really trusted in my midwife. And again, she was taking good care of us, and she would come and hang out and be really, lovely with my daughter and like connect with the family and all the things, and felt like more of a friendship in a way. Like it felt like we were getting connected in that way, which felt good at the time. But then I don't know exactly when, Emily, but it was definitely second trimester. And we started watching home birth videos, me and my daughter, and we watched a Freebirth and from a woman that I follow on social media, on Instagram. And I was like, oh, she has her birth on the internet, on YouTube. I want to watch that. And I knew I wanted Birdie, my daughter,
But
to
was
be
it
there.
Genty?
It was. Does she bring all the people?
You're just in Australia. I feel
Oh
like
yeah, okay, yeah, true.
you're bound
I just
to
feel like
come across it.
her birth and her story is so beautiful. So I was like, yeah. We watched her birth multiple times. A couple of them. And my daughter loved it. And I knew I wanted her to be there and she wanted to be there. So I was like, well, this is good. You know, she's getting an idea of a home birth. But and it was funny when I first started watching it, I was like, oh, there's no one like looking for the, you know, the person that's helping her. There was no one there. Maybe there was a family member or something, but no medical person. And I remember being like, oh, right. Like she's one of those. Because I was so separate from that still in my mind. And that's what really blew me away so then I realized somehow I think she might have posted or somebody posted, maybe she posted about on the podcast. And I was like, oh, there's a whole podcast about free birth. And again, still there was like a negative connotation because of course there was a story that had been told about a woman in this community that had passed away. And that was brought with lots of negativity around free birth. And there was a lot of things that no one knew. And there was a lot of things that were spoken about, especially I think by midwives, you know, and that came up for us as well, that story. And there was a lot of fear in it, a lot of fear for people. Anyways, and so
do you know the facts on that woman's death?
I can't say that I know 100%, but I feel that what I understand of it is that she, even in the hospital, if she'd had a hospital birth, she would have died.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well.
Yeah.
That her health
I don't know exactly
was not related to birth itself.
No, but I know I was told that it was related to that she free birthed, of course, by medical.
Right.
Yeah.
But unless the cause of death was something to do with birth.
Yeah.
Which my understanding was it wasn't. She died postpartum, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was that. So there was that already, you know, that when there's that story or that something that comes out and then everyone, you know, the news gets, anyways.
So intense.
So I, in my mind, probably had more of like that, oh, free birth, like that negative connotation around it.
Whereas no one's covering how many women are murdered in the system and who die on the operating table.
Yeah. No one's talking about that. There's no awareness around any of that, but there's a lot of awareness that free birth is, you know, dangerous.
Propaganda is not, it's not awareness.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, true. And so that's what I had in my head, Emily. And then I found your podcast and I listened to Ginty's story, I think. And even I remember listening and I'm like, but I'm not like this. I'm not like these women. And it really didn't have to do with my age, I don't think. It was more just like, I didn't have that, whatever that was, to be a free birther, which is so funny. Now I laugh. I'm like, what? It's just like being a woman who's going to give birth. And my mind
or
was
maybe
blown.
like thinking for yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, like women do. It's an important thing to point out because women other themselves from women free birth so significantly. And it is kind of interesting to think on, like, what is the thing you make up? I'm speaking to our listeners. Like, what is the thing, if you're othering yourself from us, what is the thing you make up that you don't have that I have or Chrissy has? And just like identify what that thing is you're making up. And is it really true you don't have that? You know?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It is interesting because I still don't know what I was thinking, but I also obviously had a midwife. And I started listening to like one or two stories and I'm like, okay, that's good. And then I just listened to them every morning because I would walk every morning. I was really fit in my pregnancy. I was so healthy. I was just like, you know, just feeling so good. I didn't feel like I really needed any assistance. So every day I just started to devour the stories and I was so inspired and so excited for these beautiful stories. And I'd want to hear every single one and all the different things that the women went through. And I was just in awe. And there was a different podcast that I used to listen to when I was listening to it is with Birdie. And I didn't even want to touch it. I was like, oh, no. It was like I was starting to see, you know, I was starting to see. And so that's scary too. Because once you start to pull it back, you can't put it back over your eyes. Like, and especially me, the way that I made up, like once I know something and once there's something that I'm moving towards, I don't know how people do. I can't even look back. And I could feel that in myself. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? But I would still, you know, have these, you know, meetings with my midwife. But I could feel myself wanting less and less to meet with her. Like I could feel myself putting the bound, like a distance between us, which was really surprising. I'm like, oh, I thought I would be chatting with her more, calling her more, like getting more, you know, connected with her before the birth. But I could feel it was going the opposite. I was like, not messaging, never calling, rescheduling or canceling visits because I just felt really good. And I was like, do I need to meet with you right now? What are we going to talk about? Like, and I didn't feel like baby needed to be checked because baby, I always felt him moving. I felt really connected to the baby. So the stories were very powerful for me, Emily. And that's what stories are. They're medicine. Hey, that's the power of sharing. And that's why I'm so grateful to you and all of the women that have come on. Like if I hadn't heard these stories, I probably would end up in the hospital again. You know? So I did have another scan, the one scan where maybe they check, I can't remember, the one where they check like, I think they check just like that the baby has all its limbs, whatever that is. I think I did say yes to that one. I think there was reluctance though. I think there was a part of me that wanted to be that woman that was like, you know, the wild pregnancy women. I didn't get on that boat, to be honest. I think because I was already a little bit in with my midwife and I was kind of like that one I kind of had in my mind. I would go to that scan, I would do that. But then after that, I think things really changed and something shifted for me. And especially like the way that I work as like a manifesting generator in human design is like when I go down a rabbit hole, I go hard. Like in my design, I can't not like just scratch. I don't scratch the surface. I'm burrowing my whole body into this experience. And so that's what happened with the free birth. And I started to watch the videos and I started to watch all the videos on your page. Like I literally went back to like probably the first one you ever posted at night. I would just watch them because I was like, this is possible. I started chatting to my partner about it, you know? So there came a time in my second trimester, like later in second trimester, that I started to really start dipping my toe in like, is this something I want? And I'd make jokes to my midwife. Like she'd come and I'd be like, and we'd start talking about what I want for the birth. And I'd be like, well, I'll probably just go out in the garden by myself and I'll just do my thing. And we'd kind of laugh, but I wasn't joking. I was serious, right? Like that was my truth coming through. It was like, that was the Chrissy that was like, no, you can do this. You know, you're joking, and I'd say that to my partner. I'd be like, I don't know. I might just go do it in the garden. I might just go out because we have this beautiful garden. I was like, I might just go outside and just be, you know, do the thing by myself. And he'd be like, okay, well, do you want us to just stay in the house? And I'm like, yeah. So I was having these conversations, right? It was coming out of me. And there was a couple of women friends that were really, really, really holding me. And specifically one who is actually doing like birth worker training. She held me so hard in these decisions. Like she was there when I was just like, I don't know if I can do this, you know, and she just was like, just held me, like, you know, just gave me the perspective from above. And it was really powerful to have those women around me that I could just be so honest with. And because my good girl and my people pleaser, she would like stick her head up every once in a while and be like, don't go too far there. Like you've got your midwife, you've got your thing. You don't want to wreck that relationship. What's that going to, you know, like all these silly things when you're like, this is your birth. Like, really? You're worried about this, like displeasing this person, but that's the people pleaser. That's like so toxic. And that energy was still there. So at one point, it gets to the part where I kind of say to her, after listening to enough podcasts and watching enough videos, I think I just say, what would happen if I just don't call you? Like, and I kind of was I was even like Googling, I'm like, do you have to call your midwife? Like things like, right? Like, I know, but because I, employed her, I'm like, how does it work? Like, what if I just decide? And this is where it's just such a mind fuck, right? Like I'd given some power away already, but I didn't realize it. I thought I still had it. So I was taking it back. And I just said, like, what happens if what if I just decide that I want to do this on my own? And that's when it got really a bit tricky. Yeah. Mm. It was really intense, this period, Emily, because it was very dramatic, um, in a
What'd
way,
she say?
because, well, I think she already had like quite a negative opinion about free birth on social media, because she felt, I think what I understood is that she felt that there's all these women that were jumping into free birth that didn't really know what they were getting into because they were being influenced by the free birth movement on social media.
It's so fucking condescending.
And that was, yeah,
God.
she didn't,
Like show your misogyny more. Like
yeah,
to infantilize women to that degree to a pregnant woman she's working with. Like, wow.
yeah, this was where it got really tricky for me because I didn't want to displease her. I didn't want to like knock away our friendship and like just throw it away. And um, I looked up to her and I was trying to do it in a way that I guess wasn't, going to rock the boat too much, but obviously, what was I thinking? Um, and so we had these phone conversations and I remember she was just like, I think she ended up being like, she would say things like, and even my partner, he'd be like, well, what if she's just outside? And there was this idea that like she could be there, but not be in the room. And she would say that, like, I could be here, but you could just be in the room. And if you need me, I could come in, but I could be there in case you need anything. And I think my gut knew like, nah, that's not the thing. Like it's the same, even if you're not in the room, you're in my home, like your energy's here and I'm accommodating for that. And that's the thing. That was the word. I would accommodate for anyone that would come to my birth. I knew that about myself. I was really aware, even if I'd done all this work, but I just could feel. And so
Honestly, women who know they're strong people pleasers are some of the best candidates, I think, for free birthing because that's the only way that they
that's the
cannot
only way.
feel like they're hosting and accommodating. And it's very
Yeah.
hard for some women to speak up and say no. And,
Yeah.
if you're like a beast, maybe you can handle the system. Like, maybe, probably not, but maybe.
Yeah.
But most
Yeah.
women aren't. Most women are quite accommodating and quite nervous
Yes.
about people's approval. And I
Yes.
know a lot of women that's actually what inspires their free birth because they know that about themselves.
Yes. I absolutely agree. I think one of like when I look back at my life and all the things that I've come to really listen to myself and own my own wisdom, I reckon Cosmo's birth, it was like this, it was like everything I'd been working towards. It's like I was working up to make that decision
Mhm.
um, for myself. And it just took me 45 years.
Hey, at least it happened. For a lot of people, it never even happens. So
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
start to, in good faith, explore this idea or want to explore this idea with your medical midwife, and
Yeah.
she's shitting all over it. She's not listening. She's giving you other ideas of how she could still be
Yeah.
included. Like what happens next?
So there's like a bit of not long, but there's a bit of period of time there where it's like, I think I kind of like not let go of the idea, but I kind of leave it alone for a bit just because I'm like, I feel like it was causing a lot of anxiety and like I knew that I wanted to move in that direction, but I didn't want to displease her. So after we have a couple of conversations, she kind of leaves it alone and I leave it alone. It's almost like we don't talk about it. But then I don't see her for a little while because I don't have it like there wasn't a home visit planned. And of course I'm still listening to Freebirth, stories. I think that's when I buy the Freebirth course. What's it called? The Guide to Free Everything, something about everything to free birth. Sorry.
The Complete Guide to Free Birth.
There you go. Let's get the name right, people. So I buy that and I'm like, here we go, and it's the best thing. If anyone is listening and they're thinking about it, just buy it. If you're thinking about free birth, buy it. Like it brings it's so beautiful. It was beautiful for my partner. Like, because for him, he would say things like, well, he was nervous, of course. And also another thing I want to say is like, I don't think your partner has to be 100% on board for you to do the thing, because it really, in the end, ultimately it is about the mother and what she desires for her birth. Does it help to have your partner on board? Yeah, it's much more helpful, but and my partner was always really supportive of me, but he was devil's advocate. He'd always ask me different questions, this, and I would, honestly, a lot of my stuff wasn't logical. It was just like a gut feeling. I knew, I just knew my inner wisdom was like, this is where you're supposed to go. But it was hard to always logically explain that. And then there was a point also where my partner would say things like, well, if you don't want her there, do you want to just cancel her services? And I'm like, no, I can't do that. Because postpartum, I might need her, like in my mind still, Emily, at this point, this is probably into the 3rd trimester now, where I'm like, well, I'll still want the postpartum support, and even now I'm like, well, why would I want that if I didn't want her at my birth? But at the time it felt logical, right? That was my mind going, no, you don't want to cancel that, because you'll still need her. Like, you'll still need help. And I get that I felt that way. But it was cute because my partner would kind of be like, well, why don't you just tell her? Like, you don't, but I was like, no, like, that's dramatic. And that's what it felt. I was like, that's going to cause drama. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to rock the boat.
It's such a red flag. That is such a red flag.
Yeah.
That you knew.
I didn't feel
that it was
comfortable.
For all of you birth workers listening, like, you better be damn sure that your clients feel comfortable and safe enough with you that they can disengage from your services and it would be all good.
Yeah.
Come on. And it just speaks to the hierarchy and the inappropriate authority that medical midwives walk with, and that women, actively give away and engage in. God, like, what a toxic dynamic, like, truly, like, toxic that you were afraid to speak your truth to someone that you hired, that worked for you.
Yes, exactly. And I think that was the part that would get a bit lost. Like, oh, I was the one that signed up, for her to be my support. So of course I could be the one to say, I don't want that anymore. But I think the consequences of that looked too scary for my people-pleasing Chrissy self. But
and she was not cool about it.
No, she,
so that's a legit,
she didn't.
Right. It's not just your people pleasing. Your people pleasing might be how this got, carried on, and part of why you even hired her to begin with. Totally. Like, it co-created this, but also the fact that she was anything other than whatever you want, I want, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only appropriate response here. If anyone's wondering, what would it look like if I didn't call you? You send me a picture of that baby when you've got them. Like, I am rooting for you any single way you want me. And of course you can do this on your own. Of course I'd be there in a heartbeat. Whatever way you want to do this. That is an ethical midwife.
Yeah. Yeah. There wasn't too much of that. Like, there would be sometimes maybe little things she'd say and it sounded like maybe, oh, okay, maybe I could do that. But, at the end of the day, it wouldn't have been right for me anyways. I needed to make the hard choice. I needed to walk through that door, like to really do that, for myself the right way, the way that, not like in a sneaky, because it felt sneaky. Like, oh, I'll just not tell her. Like, no, just,
anyway. You're 45. Let's own our shit.
Come on, grow up, woman. Put on the pants, do the thing.
For real.
So yeah, I walked through a lot of like back and forth with friends, like two of my closest girlfriends I would talk about a lot of things with, which was really helpful, just having them soundboard it. And, but I knew the whole time. And I would do like I would lay down and like do the pendulum and ask the baby, do you want a midwife? Do you want to just be us? And I knew that Cosmo was like, Mama, we got to do this with just us. Like, he was telling me, and I could feel it. but I just didn't know how to make that big step. And so I was watching, so we were watching the Freebirth course. And that was really helpful for my partner. So if any women are listening and their partners are struggling with it, I think having that knowledge, that wisdom from you and Yolanda was huge for Craig. Like he really appreciated the videos going through, what's it called? Variations of normal, all the different things. It was really insightful. And I learned more about my own body in those videos than I've ever learned from any midwife or anyone. Like I learned about the placenta. I learned all these things. It was wild. I was like, I'm literally doing this. It was like, third trimester, getting closer. And I'm like devouring it. I'm like hardcore studying about my body and about birth. And it was amazing. So empowering, empowering for my partner as well. And then I'll just forward to the part where she comes for a visit. My midwife comes for a visit. This is after we've had those phone conversations. Probably not too long after. So and at this point, Emily, I'll say I'm, I guess I'm 40 or 41-ish weeks, based on the guest date. And so, I'm going past the time, the allotted time, in the system that's like comfortable for people. But I felt good. I was like, I had no concerns. I wasn't worried. I felt so good in my body. I felt the baby. Like we were fine. And she came and it was a really hard conversation. It was I cried pretty much the whole time. Because I was already like nervous and I already knew that it was going to be hard but she came in and her normal like warmth wasn't there, and like she'd be like warm and we, I don't know. It was just her energy had changed. Which now I look back and I'm like, I get it. She changed because she could feel that I didn't need her anymore and that I was taking this other path that she didn't really love. And I get it. Like, I'd hired her to do this thing and I'm basically not wanting that, and
for someone with low maturity, right, and low emotional intelligence, that would be the response.
Yeah.
Like you're more compassionate than I am, but like, I'm sorry, like this is your service and it's to serve and be supportive of mothers and their like autonomy and home birth and all this. Like, and you can't be like professional and mature and loving and supportive. Like, no.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. The conversation, what ended up happening was, she kind of was like, so, how are you feeling? And what do we kind of asked like how things are going, how I was feeling. And I was like, I'm good. I feel really good. And yeah. And then, there was lots of little things that of course I didn't, I'm not going to remember all of it, but like there was little things throughout the pregnancy where like, if I was doing a lot of like if I had creativity flowing through and I was like, oh, I've got this thing coming through. I created this program called Wild Heart Woman while I was pregnant with Cosmo. And I remember her being like, oh, well, your main focus should be the baby. And I remember being a little bit like, well, actually, if I have creative energy, it should go wherever I want it to,
Weird.
And I remember her commenting on things like, especially if I was doing a lot of like, cause I did like big walks cause I felt good. And also I was like, I want to be strong, for
You're
my
not
birth.
sick.
Yeah. And it would kind of be like, oh, maybe we should, take that down, maybe start doing something a bit gentler, as I was getting further on into my pregnancy. And I remember just being like,
no,
I know it feels good for me.
Oh my
So there was
God.
those kinds of things that would come up, and I could feel myself even going, oh, actually, I do trust myself more. Like she doesn't know, she's there to support me, but she doesn't need to advise me on how to use my energy or whatever. So in this conversation, she says something like, so do you want to know your options? And this is where I remember this very vividly because this is where things went different. And I just immediately went, no. Because I could feel, it was like, I think it was my options because I was getting to 42 weeks, right? In a few days. She was like, do you want to know your options? And I went, no. And I was like, and I just immediately could feel her go like a bit pissed and, kind of like, what do you, anyways. And that's when that's when the conversation took a big turn where I could feel she was almost like, just, it went hard and she was a bit angry and like not angry, maybe not showing anger, but just like really stern, like, Chrissy, you hired me as your midwife. You've given me so much to think about. Like she was actually saying, you've had me, really like basically having to process all these things because I'm, trying to go this other way. And she's like, I'm, questioning things, and I'm just, I was obviously triggered some things, obviously. And then she's kind of like, but I know that I am a midwife and I am here to do this work and I serve women. And she was kind of like, this is my, no, even if I was not, she's like, this isn't about my, what's it called that they have? My license. This isn't about my license. This is just about my spiritual work as a midwife, and something around like, even if she didn't have a license or whatever, she would still advise all these things. She would still do these things. It was like this.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, well, because I think she was like, maybe it was brought up that, oh, it would be a concern for her if I'm free birth or something. I don't know, for her job or whatever. And she kind of said to me, like, you're using me more as like, it's like, I'm a doula, but I'm not. I'm a midwife. Like, I have so much knowledge. I have so much wisdom. I've been to all these births. And so she was kind of like saying all this stuff. But when she did say
Wow.
that, I was like, oh, it actually made me go, oh, maybe I am using her in a different way than, what I originally signed up, obviously.
Well,
Than what we agreed upon.
Chrissy, she wants to be in charge.
Yeah.
This is what she's saying. That's what that whole speech was. You're
Yeah.
treating me as if we're equals. Oh, honey, that's what you pay a doula for. A
Yes.
midwife is in charge. A midwife tells you what to do.
Yeah.
And for
A
some
midwife
reason,
knows
you
more.
seem to have forgotten that. That's
Yeah.
what she's saying. Oh my God, it's so condescending. I cannot handle it.
Yeah, it was. And that's probably why I had a lot of tears too, because I was like really like, yeah, I could feel it wasn't right for me. And I remember
But then what happened?
she had brought the birthing pool and the medicine. What's the medicine they use? I don't know. Like it was in little vials. Like this was not this visit, but a visit before where she brought the birth pool. What I remember Emily having this moment of like, I don't feel excited about it. I was going to be excited and I wasn't. I was like, do I want that? I don't even know if I want that. And then she brought something for maybe if I'm bleeding, and she had to keep it in my fridge, some sort of medicine. And I remember not liking that I had it there. I was like, oh, I don't really want this, in my fridge. But I guess I had
she
it.
brought you pharmaceuticals to inject into your body after you gave birth and had you keep it in your fridge. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
To be prepared, I think.
Oh my God.
Because I was getting close. Yeah.
So you're totally out of alignment.
So we have,
it's coming to a head.
so we have the conversation. She's like, 42 weeks. She was basically saying, these are your options. Cause I ended up saying, okay, tell me my options. Cause at that point I was like, all right, fine. We're in this, whatever. And it was like to get a scan. And I knew I didn't want a scan. I didn't need a scan. Like we were good. Baby was going to come whenever baby wanted. Like it was, it was good. But she was like, and she gave me examples of women that were like also natural and they ended up getting scans and it was a really good thing for them. I don't know.
Oh my God.
And because I said I didn't want one, she's like, well, I'll send you all the things. And then I just need you to read through some stuff and then sign it. And I remember being like, oh, why? Like sign what? Sign that I'm not getting a scan maybe. And then she wanted to make an appointment for 42, exactly the 42 week mark. So she could come and check that we were okay. So I did that. I made that appointment in my calendar. And it was kind of like we ended it like we were all good. Like it was better. And I remember being like so confused because I didn't feel better. I felt worse. I was crying. I didn't sleep that night, Emily. In the morning, I went for a big walk and I knew. I was like, you can't. It's time. And I don't know what made me finally just do it. And then I called her up. I think I said to my partner, I got to do this. And he's like, okay, I support you. And then I called her up. And I said, hey, this is what I said. I think you're right. I'm treating you as a doula and I hired you as my midwife. And that's not fair to you. I think I said a few things and she goes, are you wanting to cancel care? That's what she said. And I said, yes. And she's like, okay, cool. You can just send me an email. And she said, and is this for postpartum as well? And it was funny. In the moment, I immediately went, yes, I want to cancel for postpartum. Like then my body went, yes, let's cancel. And so we did that, and that was really hard, but I got off the phone and I was like, I just was like, this huge weight was like, and it lifted. And then she came, picked up her medicine, picked up the pool. We had a hug, but it was, I think in that conversation where she was kind of, that big conversation we'd had in person before I canceled, she had said to me, "Do you know anything?" Like she'd asked me, like, "Do you know what you're getting into? Like, have you done any, like, and I actually, that's when I said to her, I was like, yeah, actually I did buy a course all about free birth and I've been learning a lot. It was, yeah, I'm doing this.
Do you even know anything?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah. It
God.
was like, it was an interesting question now. And I look back, I'm like, well, I know my body and my baby knows how to come out. So we're good. But yes, I did buy a course and I've been diving in and I've learned more from it than anyone else, and I know my
And
body.
love
And
the testimonial. And also, none of you women need to do shit in order to allow
yes.
a
And I
baby to
think,
come out. But if
yeah,
you don't feel that way and you do want to do something, take the course.
yeah, totally. And that's what I want to make clear too, is like, because when I listen to stories, like some women, they didn't learn, they didn't study. They just let their body do what it's meant to do.
You know what it really is it's how much deprogramming do you need and are you up for? And I have known plenty of women who live off the grid barefoot and have no medical consciousness programming in their brains, and
Yeah.
they watch the moon, and
Yeah.
that's their pregnancy,
Yeah.
and they
Exactly.
don't have any need or desire to get into the intellectual. But for
Yes.
most of us, that's not most of us. And for most of us, we aren't that. Even though,
Yes.
and I appreciate your story because you're a yoga girl, you live on a farm, like there's all these things, but
Yeah.
so what? We still have a lot of deprogramming to do, and
Yes.
it's are you going to do it, And so the Complete Guide to Free Birth is one really epic resource to help accelerate that deprogramming. People get
Yeah.
all weird about it and they're like, well, that's all stuff I could have found on the internet. It's like, totally.
Oh gosh.
If you wanted to spend 20 years attending
Yeah.
births and collecting research and
No.
pontificating on these concepts, of course you could find everything you need. But if you'd like a fast track deprogramming
Yeah.
program, that's the shit that FBS offers, and
Yes.
do you need
100%.
it? Well, maybe, because if you're going to sabotage your own birth because you don't know what's normal, then we're here to help you with that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's all packed in to one little, well, big, big package. And that's beautiful. Like, yeah, you could Google stuff, but you're not going to find it like what you guys have done.
No.
And it was, I guess I would say to any women listening, like for me, it was a lot for my partner as well. I think for him, it was really helpful to listen and to learn. And he didn't even like watch all of it. It was just a few of the videos of the things that he was a bit, you know, concerned or like just wondered about. Yeah. I think that was one of the reasons that it was really powerful for us as a couple. Okay. So so I canceled my midwife on a Wednesday. And even my partner had said, I think the baby is waiting for you to do what you need to do. And not shitting you, I went into labor on Friday morning. So it was literally like I had one day where I didn't have a midwife, and then I went into labor. And it was beautiful because I went into labor naturally, which I didn't get to do the first time. And I walked every morning, like I'd said, and I was walking around the farm. And often I'd drive myself to a really beautiful spot. But today I was like, I need to stay on the farm for some reason. And while I was walking, I started to get some sensations. And at one point I was like, ooh, I can't walk through these. Right. So then, yeah, I could feel things were starting, but I didn't want to get too excited or get my partner too excited. But I went back home and I was like, I think there's things happening. And so he went out and got us coffees and something to eat. And then I was just like hanging out with my daughter. And like every so often I'd try to breathe through it, but I had to like kind of stop talking to her and just like, I could talk, but it was just like I couldn't move around. And so they were coming, but like slowly. And man, the gradual of natural labor, like it was so different to the induction labor of like, do, do, do. So it was really, I really appreciated that about it. And so it was just kind of like, I spent the day just laying down, resting, knowing that I need to just hydrate and rest if this is happening today. So I really took care of myself. My partner took our daughter and kind of got out of the house, and they went and ran errands to different shops. And then, yeah, I just kept having surges like every so often. And I remember I was messaging with a couple of my closest friends, and it was weird, but I was like, I'm not going to tell them. Like, no, I wanted to, everything I wanted, I knew I wanted to keep it so close. And it was so weird for me, but I was like, I could feel, no, don't tell anybody. Just your partner, just Birdie and my partner. So yeah, all day, just chilling with myself. They'd come home sometimes, check on me, and then they'd go out again and play or whatever. And then there was a point in the afternoon, they were out and I was laying on the bed, and it was about, I think almost 5, I remember 5 p.m. And I heard like, I had a surge, and then I heard like a big pop. And I was like, oh, what's that sound? And it was a little bit wet in my underwear, but not like gushing. Cause like you imagine like all this water, but it was just a little bit. And I went to the toilet and I'm like, huh, maybe it wasn't, but I heard the pop. So it must've been, it was. And I told my partner, I was like, hey, I think my water just broke maybe. I heard a big loud sound. So they stayed out for a bit. And then finally, when they came back, it was picking up, the surges were closer. They were a bit more intense. I was laying on my side on the bed, and I remember being like, do I want to get up? Do I want to do anything, movement? But I just was happy on the bed. And I remember I'd watched Yolanda's, one of her births, and she was on the bed a lot. And I remember being like, oh, you can be on the bed. Like
you can do whatever you want.
You can do what you want. Yeah, that was it. Exactly. And I was like, what do I want to do? I'm like, I'm here. I'm on my side. I'm happy. So I stayed on the bed the whole time. There was one time I tried to get out and it didn't work. So I stayed on the bed. They came in and out. My partner started to bring in like towels and put down like puppy pads and get things set up, and brought me coconut water. I had my little playlist. And as the surges got stronger and my daughter was there, it was really beautiful. One of my favorite moments was she came in, they brought me a bowl because I was starting to have to vomit a bit every once in a while. She was like patting my head and she sat with me. She was like, Mama, let's ohm. We need to ohm together. It's so beautiful. My partner caught it on video too. And it was like, I was having a surge. So I'm like having the surge. And then she's like, and we're ohming together. It was really like, she was amazing. Like I'm so happy she was there. Like she was amazing. So then they would left me again. And then I just started to get really, inward, like just go inward. And what was so beautiful about it was I found that when I was by myself, it was the most potent and the most beautiful, Emily. And when they come in, I would love being checked on, and he'd help me get my coconut water or clean up anything that's happening on the bed with me.
Yeah.
He was such a good cleaner. He was like, tuk, 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 tuk. I was like, you're amazing. And then they'd leave and I'd be like, okay. And it was just like so perfect by myself. So like, I just felt so connected to God. And I remember part of my thing that I would say is stay open. I'm opening like a flower. That was kind of like a mantra for me. And as the surges got more intense and I could feel him moving down, that was the most potent part. Was like, I could never feel Birdie moving. I felt him like moving down through my pelvis. And every time I'd feel like I want to resist it, I'd be like, I'm open, I'm opening. And so I did, just kept opening. And then they came back in again at one point, and he was going to try to get Birdie down for bed, but she kept getting woken up because I was getting so loud, right? I was making my sounds, and they were in another room. So she'd come in, and there's like pictures of her laying down because she's so tired, laying on the floor, but like wanting to be near me. It was really beautiful. He set up a little altar for me with one of my goddesses and a candle. So I was just staring at the candle a lot, and I kind of like hold onto the bedding and grip onto it when I'd have a surge. And then there was a point where when he was gone, I started to feel like, okay, I need to push. Like I started to feel the bearing down, and it was so natural. It was just like, no one's coaching me. I'm just like, I'm doing the thing. My body's doing it. And I could feel like, oh, here we go. And there was like way more like poo coming out, like all the things are happening. It felt way messier than the hospital, but that makes sense, obviously, because they were like cleaning you up the whole time. And my partner was gone for a while.
You're like disposing everything right into a bag that's under you while you're on your back,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this was just like, I was in it, all natural. And I couldn't really move at this point too much because it was just so intense, and I felt more comfortable laying still finally I get to the point where I'm pushing and I can feel like, I'm like, oh, I feel like his head's getting closer. And my partner's not in there. And I'm like, do I do this by myself? And then I'm like, I think it could be really helpful to have my partner here and clean me up. So anyways, I'm yelling for him. This part's funny. I'm yelling for him because I think he fell asleep. Bless his heart. And I'm like, love, like yelling. And finally he comes in, and that's when it gets like, it's intense. And he's like, whoa. And he can see, like, he starts to see that Cosmo's crowned and his head's there. And he's like, he gets his camera and he's like videoing, cause it's just, he's like, oh my God, like, it's just like, I've opened like a flower. It's amazing, right? Like this huge head sitting in my yoni. And I'm just like, felt so calm. And I have my hand on his head. And at one point, I'm feeling like, is he actually coming out? And I'm not even pushing. And there's this weird thing that happens. And I even wrote down the time at 10:35, he's crowning and I don't do anything. I'm just laying there, and he's starting to slide out on his own. He's just sliding out, and like, there's no pushing. It's so peaceful. My partner is like, when he's videoing, you can hear him going, he's like breathing for me. And he comes, his head starts to just come out, but nothing else is really happening. Like, I'm not getting a contraction, and I start to sing to him like that. This was where it got psychedelic. Like, I'm singing to Cosmo, and I'm just like, we love you, baby. We love you. You can come. We love you. And I remember looking at my partner, and I remember saying, like, it's okay. Like, I felt so, like, it just felt, all I can say is psychedelic, because it was like, I was just like, I was God, but I was one with God. And I was like, thank you, God. Like, I was like in this moment, and I was capturing it in my mind. Right. And so at one point I'm like, I think I should move. And I felt in my body that I wanted to move. So I get on my hands and knees, and his head's like all the way out. And I remember feeling like, I think he's okay. Like, you kind of almost hear a little sputtering, like his head was like, he was out. And I knew he was fine because he's connected to the placenta, blah, blah, blah. And at one point I'm like, should I push? And my partner was really beautiful. He goes, no, you just wait. You're fine. You just wait. Cause it's quite a while before the next surge. And that's when I went, oh. And so then I immediately, like, my body just tells me, go into a lunge. So I stick my leg out there and I go into a lunge, and then I get my surge, and he just comes onto the bed. My partner catches him and then hands him through to me. And I grab him, put him up on my chest. And I'm just like, this feeling of like, we did it. Like, I just felt so proud. And I had asked baby while he was in the womb, like, could he cry? Like, not, a little while because how, and he does, like, you can kind of hear him breathing, and then he just does this huge cry. And I just like laugh so loud because I'm just so happy and so joyful. And I hold him to my chest, and my partner, I check he's a boy, and my partner, like, he's got the video camera there, like me, like just having this moment. And it was so powerful, Emily, because I just felt so empowered in myself. I was like, I knew we could do it. And I remember saying that we did it. I knew we could do it. And so we have that moment together, and we kind of have this time where it's just the three of us. And then Birdie wakes up and comes in again. When we're about to not cut the cord, sorry, we were burning the cord. So we had the placenta. I'd obviously given birth to the placenta, and then Birdie comes in, and we have the candle ready, and we have everything ready, and the placenta's in the board and in the bowl. And she's like so excited. She's like, oh, my brother's here, like emotional. And she's even crying a little bit, like, I want to cry. And it was so beautiful. And it was just lovely to then, we did the burning together of the cord, and that was really beautiful, really powerful. And that was, just everything that I wanted. It was like us as a family, no other people, no other opinions, nothing else, like to accommodate, no one to accommodate, just my energy and the baby and my family. And that was really, really powerful. And then with the placenta birth, I did just this is kind of takes an interesting turn, but with my placenta, I birthed it, and I did it in a lunge. And in hindsight, I wish I would have just laid down. So I did it kind of like kneeling in a lunge, and it took a little while, right? I could feel surges, but like it didn't come right away. So I reckon I was kind of kneeling up for almost like 20 minutes while holding my baby. And it finally did come out really easily. Like it just plopped out. But then I started to fade because I'd been up for so long, and I think I hadn't eaten yet. I hadn't, all the things. So I start to kind of like fade onto the bed. Like I'm like leaning and then basically pass out. And my partner, of course, is concerned. But then I come to again pretty quickly, get me on the bed, get some food into me, and I'm fine, right? I'm fine. And then, and we do all the burning of the cord, all the connection, the beautiful amazingness. And then I'm like, I need to pee. And I'm determined to stand up to go to the bathroom and go to the bathroom. And now I remember even learning in the course, like, it's best if you can stay horizontal. Like, it's best to, if you need to, like, stay horizontal, rest. And after having a little bit of a slump over or pass out, I should have probably stayed on my back. I didn't. And I was
Did you faint?
determined to go in the toilet. So yeah, in the bathroom, he was kind of holding me and I kind of fainted again. And that was concerning for him because at that point it was the second time. And then he said it took a little while for me to come back. And I know I would have had just a low blood pressure. Like I know I didn't lose extra blood. We saw the placenta was good. There wasn't clots. There wasn't anything stuck in there. Like I felt really, really like I knew that it was just, I probably was silly and I should have stayed laying down because my blood pressure. And, so he called 000, which is our like 911 for us. And he asked me a couple of times, like, should I call them? But because I wasn't really, and even this, I don't remember this part, like I don't remember him asking me. So obviously I was out. And I appreciate that he did because he was in a position now where he had me, the baby, and Birdie, my daughter. And he's kind of like, okay, is she okay? And I came to and I'm like, oh, no, I'm okay. And of course I was like, yeah, I'm fine because I didn't, and the ambulance people did come and they were, of course, like they were really lovely. Actually, I was laying horizontal in the bathroom. They kind of helped, just to check me over. I was fine. I think my blood pressure, yes, was fine. It wasn't quite good. Like it was a bit low, hence why I shouldn't have probably been standing. And yeah, they ended up taking me to the hospital. And this part was actually really, to be honest, it was really healing because I went back to the same place where I had Birdie. I declined anything I didn't want. They just gave me the fluids, basically. They didn't do anything else. They asked if I wanted to stitch, and I was like, nah. As a little tiny tear, and I declined that. They tried to check a few things, and I just said, no, I'm good. I'm good. And it was really empowering for me because I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel like I needed to please them. I was like in my power. And then we went home and everything was fine. And they even looked at the placenta and they're like, this is a healthy placenta. I'm like, I know. So it was really like, and I appreciate my partner wanting the support at that time. So there's like, we've had lots of discussions around that because I think he felt like he was trying not to like let me down by calling, because he knew I wanted to just be at home. But I also really appreciate that he did what he felt was right to support me at the time and for him to feel like I was safe or whatever. And we've had lots of discussions about that. And I do appreciate that. And actually for me going back, there was something about it that was just like, and then even the nurses were like, wow, so you did this by yourself at home. I'm like, yeah, I think that's what women do when they free birth, but I didn't say the word free birth at the hospital. So yeah, that was kind of, we went back home and then everything was really beautiful. And I was just, it was really, I was in awe of the fact that we did what we did and how psychedelic it was. I don't think I really understood when women would talk about psychedelic stuff in birth. I'd be like, what are they even talking about? And to have that happen, the only thing I found challenging was like coming back to like just the norm, like almost like the normal life of like, all the things you do with a baby, poop, feed, do all the things. And I felt myself still wanting to stay in that crazy psychedelic portal that I had opened. And then I just found ways to try and integrate that, into the everyday life. But yeah, it was the most amazing and empowering experience of my entire life. And for anyone listening, it's okay to change your mind at the very last minute, like I did. Yeah, 2 days before he came, it was the right thing for me. I for whatever reason, I needed to wait, until that moment. And that was when I knew that I could make that choice.
Yeah. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to do whatever you want.
That's right. And it was,
Awesome.
yeah, it was, I'm just grateful that you started this podcast, Emily, because if I hadn't heard these stories, I would have probably taken that same path, and I would have ended back in the hospital to have my baby. And I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that I did listen to the stories and that I listened to my own intuition. And, for anyone in their 40s, you have every right to have babies and have a free birth. Like there's no age limit, as you said. And
if you can get pregnant, you can give birth.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time and all your stories. And Yeah, it was a pleasure to listen to them all.
Oh, thank you for having me. I was really honored to be able to come on. Yeah.
Mm.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. You can support this podcast by donating to it through the link in the show notes below. And of course, leaving an awesome review on whatever platform you listen on. The more reviews, the more visibility the show gets. So let's spread the good word of sovereign birth. Don't forget, you can watch our podcast interviews on YouTube and see the women as they tell their birth and power stories. And you'll also find our viral Freebirth collection of epic, raw birth videos on our YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We've always got a lot going on at Freebirth Society, and you can find out all about it at freebirthsociety.com, at Freebirth Society on Instagram, and opt in to my newsletter below. We offer courses on free birth, authentic midwifery, the blood mysteries, as well as one-on-one coaching, in-person retreats, and of course our annual women's gathering, the Matriarch Rising Festival. Our exclusive, private, vetted membership, The Lighthouse, is definitely something to check out if you're looking for a community of wise sisters to get guidance from and to meet in real life. Together we rise, sisters. We must speak our stories, fully claim our lives, and support one another. This is the living revolution, and I am so grateful to be in it with all of you. I'll leave you with our gorgeous Freebirth Society theme song, Wild Woman by Aruba Red.
I honor you for the wisdom you held, the ancient traditions of plant medicine and womb magic. I feel the spirit of the ancestors as I place my hands upon my belly. This sacred portal will be honored. Eons upon light beams of survival, withstanding the eradication of our power by design. I will not allow the separation of our young to be forced upon me. My sisters will no longer birth in captivity. The picket line redefined from burning our wild women to paralyzing us and drugging our babes. Strapped down in a clinical white bed, drying up the milk from our breasts. Keep your needles. My family will never again be doomed to chase those dragons or your poison. We reject your fear. We choose love. Everything with intention. Death, ascension. I will fly and bring her back from the stars.